Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
This one's wife, the Queen's fury over Lilibet. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We're not talking about the current Queen Camilla, but reference to the late Queen Elizabeth II, who exhibited her anger in relation to certain activity of her idiot grandson and his controlling wife. Rebecca English writes in the Daily Mail, Queen's fury over naming of baby Lilibet. Aide says monarch was as angry as I'd ever seen her, after Harry and this one's wife claimed they had her blessing to use childhood nickname. Queen Elizabeth was infuriated by Harry and this one's wife's claim that she had given her blessing to their daughter being named Lilibet, a new book reveals. One member of her staff says the monarch was as angry as I'd ever seen her, after the Duke and Duchess of Sussex publicly stated they would not have used her private family nickname if she had not been supportive. The couple even ordered their aggressive firm of lawyers, Shillings, to write to news broadcasters and publishers, most notably the BBC, saying claims she was not asked for permission were false and defamatory and should not be repeated. But when the Sussexes attempted to co-opt Buckingham Palace into propping up their version of events, they were rebuffed. Now, you will recall that this one's wife purloined the Queen's childhood nickname. Lilibet was the name that was used because Elizabeth, when she was a young child, couldn't pronounce her own name. And this nickname was then used by her parents, most notably her father, King George VI, and also her sister, Margaret. It has a particular personal resonance for the late monarch, and demonstrating the way that she tramples on anything and everything in the pursuit of the prime aims, this one's wife came storming in like a bull in a china shop and took that nickname and applied it to her daughter. This one's wife and Harry made it seem as if the Queen had approved of this, that they had sought her permission, and that she had willingly provided it. This information suggests that that was not the case. Why might this one's wife have behaved in the way that she did? Well, whichever way you look at it, she acted with her usual sense of entitlement, a lack of boundary recognition, an absence of emotional empathy for how the person is affected by her behaviour, and a lack of accountability for her actions. This is typical of the narcissist that is this one's wife. Her narcissism will have justified the action. One potential route was that the Queen was painted white, and this one's wife took the name, albeit without permission, believing that it was a sweet and cute homage to Queen Elizabeth. See, we've used your nickname for our daughter. She's very special to us, you're very special to us, and hence we've used the nickname. This one's wife, because of her lack of emotional empathy, fails to recognise how this could be viewed with disapproval, that it's seen as intrusive, that it's done without permission. But in her world, the narcissism will essentially tell her this: but I've done something nice. I've used her nickname and applied it to our daughter. Surely she and everybody else should be thrilled that we've done that our very, very special daughter has been named using her nickname. She should be thanking me, not complaining about it. That is the indignant reaction of the narcissist. And remember, the narcissism will justify the activity on the basis of, but I've done something nice. I don't understand what you're complaining about. This one's wife cannot compute that it wasn't her name to take, that she didn't recognise a boundary, that she hasn't been accountable for her behaviours. None of that will stack up. An alternative was that the Queen was painted black, and this was done as an act of provocation, as if to say, I'm going to wind you up by taking your nickname and applying it to our daughter to show you can't stop me and I can do anything that I want. Thereafter, of course, when that action was accused of being reprehensible, that would be a threat to control, and therefore this one's wife's narcissism would attempt to nullify those threats to control by saying, but the Queen approved. She'd given permission. Notwithstanding that, the action was done as a means of provoking the Queen by taking her childhood nickname. Again, the narcissism would justify such action on the basis that the Queen and her relatives had been nasty to this one's wife, and therefore it was fair game for this one's wife to appropriate the name. Whether the Queen was painted white or whether she was painted black, it doesn't matter. That's only relevant with regard to the reasoning that her narcissism adopts for the taking of the name. But the same thing applies, namely, it shows her sense of entitlement, lack of boundary recognition, lack of accountability for her behaviour, and an absence of emotional empathy. It also demonstrates that when it was reported that permission was not granted, that was viewed as a threat to control, and therefore lawyers were instructed to suggest that if you are saying that we didn't get that permission, then that's false and defamatory, and you ought not to repeat them, so shut up. Another means of affecting control. This revelation comes in the latest instalment of a new biography, Charles III, New King, New Court. The Mail continues, and obviously it's been brought up because the Mail is serialising this. In 2021, Prince Harry and this one's wife's decision to call their new daughter Lilibet, who was born in California and has only once briefly been to the United Kingdom, raised eyebrows. Lilibet was the affectionate childhood nickname of the late Queen, said to have come about because as a child Princess Elizabeth could never pronounce her name properly. It was only ever used by her parents, King George VI, the Queen Mother, and her sister Princess Margaret, as well as her husband Prince Philip, and a handful of close friends. At the time, the BBC reported it had been told by a palace source that the Queen was not asked by the Duke and Duchess as to whether they could use it. Other sources told media, including the Mail, that while the Queen was called by her grandson and his wife, she felt she wasn't in a position to say no. But the Sussex's spokesman insisted the couple would not have used the name had the Queen not been supportive. They said at the time the Duke spoke with his family in advance of the announcement. In fact, his grandmother was the first family member he called. During that conversation, he shared their hope of naming their daughter Lilibet in her honour. Had she not been supportive, they would not have used the name. Strongly worded legal letters were then sent out. Hardman writes that some of the late monarch's household were particularly interested that amidst a wealth of private family information and criticism of staff members, Harry mysteriously omitted the entire incident from his memoir. The author says, one privately recalled that Elizabeth II had been as angry as I'd ever seen her in 2021, after the Sussexes announced that she had given them her blessing to call their baby daughter Lilibet, the Queen's childhood nickname. The couple subsequently fired off warnings of legal action against anyone who dared to suggest otherwise, as the BBC had done. However, when the Sussexes tried to co-opt the palace into propping up their version of events, they were rebuffed. Once again, it was a case of recollections may vary. The Queen's reaction clearly demonstrates that she did not approve of the use of her nickname, and it is demonstrative of the narcissism of this one's wife that she saw nothing wrong in taking that name, either because she viewed it as paying homage, or that she viewed it as payback for the way that she had been treated. Either way, its use, taking somebody else's childhood nickname and applying it to a daughter without approval or permission, is demonstrative of her sense of entitlement, her lack of emotional empathy, an absence of accountability for her behaviour, and a failure to recognise boundaries. Once again, her behaviour being driven by the pursuit of the prime aims. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.